Greetings and salutations, everyone. I'm Crazed, and this is my co-host, Raven.
Hello.
And we are back at it with the Animen podcast, episode 2. How are you doing today, by the way?
Oh, I'm doing fine now. There was a huge a flooding situation with the water in our building.
Yeah, you sent me a video of it just pouring down in your cabinet this morning. I was like, oh my god.
Going faster.
Yeah, so the thing is, yesterday it was the radiator which was leaking in our weather was 4 degrees, and then today it was the pipes from the apartment above us. Just looking at water dripping through your cabinets is it's disorienting, to say the least.
I bet it would be more disorienting if you owned the place too. You'd just be like, oh
my god, yeah.
Like,
I was like, thank God.
In your stomach, when you see that. But like, luckily you're just renting, so it's like, this ain't not my problem.
Right. And our landlord is super responsive, really great. So, he was right on it on a Sunday morning. But man, what a way to wake up and just like start the day.
Did anything get damaged?
Luckily, no. So I was able to move everything out of the cabinets, and it was only one side of the cabinets. So just kind of put everything on the kitchen table, dried a few things off, but yeah, nothing was ruined. It was just not fun. I was also doing laundry at the time, so it was like, okay, well, this guy's working on my pipes, and I'm also like running out the door across the street to the laundromat every 30 minutes. So it was a fun morning.
No, I bet. Well, luckily that's all taken care of now, right? You had someone fix it.
Yeah.
Man, I haven't had that kind of issue since I lived in a townhome, so that was it's kind of coming back to me too. But man, that sucks.
Yeah, I heard about your townhome experience.
I think I've told you off air, but yeah, like I lived in the basement area of the townhome. It was a 3-story section. There was kind of like the middle, the first floor, second floor, but then there was kind of like a sub basement. Because I live in Colorado, so most of the townhomes was like built on a slant. So, you just had all this extra room when they're building on that property. So I lived in the bottom floor, and then I had a bunch of roommates up at the top. And so I lived down there, but yeah, I had like a storage room down there, had all our stuff. Yeah, it was like one flood, one pouring rain week, and everything was just coming down and ruined all my clothes. Because it was in a closet. I had stuff on the floor. I used to collect gaming boxes, like, the console boxes and stuff. I always just didn't ever want to get rid of that stuff. So I kept all those. Those got all destroyed. So I was like, well, maybe this is a blessing in disguise. But yeah, it happens. I mean, that's what you get sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, yours sounded a lot more hectic. I mean, you're like, what floor are you on? Because I know you live in
3rd floor. There are like 7 floors, I think, but I'm on the 3rd. And it was the people's pipes above us. So the handyman had to travel back and forth from our 2 floors, like figuring out, okay, how do I stop this? Checking that the water wasn't still coming down. It was exciting, and having 2 dogs just like going crazy with this guy just coming in and going out and coming in.
Well, I'm glad you got it all handled this morning, so we can discuss our topic of today. What is that?
It is anime dubs versus anime subs, the age-old debate.
Where do we begin with this? I mean, you got several. We have several questions we can talk about.
Yeah, I think we start with the questions. I think we start with the most obvious, the friendliest way we could start this. What do we prefer? So I'll turn that on you first. What do you prefer?
I get the heat first.
Yeah.
So over the years, I feel like it was standard just to be subbed. And over time, I've grown to just do more dub, just because everything has just gotten easier to watch and stuff. Everything's simul dub now.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go all the way back between mid 2000s, there was a lot of just anime series that were inaccessible, and that was just were hard to translate, and you'd have to usually go the illegal route or the abridged route sometimes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, there was rare exception, because you had popular anime at the time that was international, like Sailor Moon, like Dragon Ball Z, around those times. Right. But like over time, I think I've just, and it goes all the way back to like I think our first episode, which we talked about the first animes that we watched. Most of those were dubbed for me.
Yeah,
and it was like
same.
early 2000 for me. So I think over time I've kind of leaned toward that. And that's not to say I don't like sub. I can appreciate sub. When we get into more of the questions, I feel like I'll have more nitpicky things, but I would say dub. How about you?
And honestly, I would say sub, which I think is going to make this a very interesting episode. But something you said did strike me as very interesting, and I hadn't considered this, which was, I think you're right that there was a moment of time where we had like just the very popular anime getting a dub as they were kind of airing on Toonami or on other networks like Sci-Fi, but we didn't have the kind of large scale capabilities of kind of dubbing anime and having all of that in-house that we seem to have today, especially with the prevalence of streaming services like Crunchyroll and others. We just didn't have that kind of attention or that kind of, I guess, market desire for that to take place. So it was like either you get a crappy, well, not crappy, but a very interesting abridged dub version, or you kind of just stick with the sub of some of these more off the beaten path anime.
Yeah, I mean, like you got, like you said, the fan subs, I guess is the best term for it. They were usually distributed illegally around that time, but then they could, they would help generate that overseas interest for a show.
Right.
But I mean, obviously, translation is hard, because you got sub saying one thing, and then we have to translate it to, to our standard, which is kind of hard. Right. Which we'll get into a lot of those just bad dubs over time. I know we have it all written down here. Do you think meaning is a lost or changed in the dub version? Is that one of the questions?
Yeah, that's something that I was very interested to kind of talk about and get kind of your perspective on as well. But I think that my thought for kind of a dubbed version has always been you have to kind of see it as its own work in some ways. Sure, it has the same visuals. We're kind of going through the same kind of scenes and have the same characters, but the team that's doing the dub and really the subtitle as well, they're making creative choices, especially when we're thinking about transposing the original work into a new context or for an audience from a different culture in a different part of the world. We have to kind of make those considerations and make those creative choices that do affect the kind of original intended meaning, for better and for worse. And I think that's kind of why I added as an addendum to that question, maybe we can talk about meaning lost, but we should also, in fairness, talk about meaning added when we have a dubbed version, because there are opportunities where we don't have to be or feel so kind of enslaved to the original intent, but think of this as more of a collaborative space where we honor the original intent, but also think about, well, how can we make this meaningful for the audience we're trying to present it to?
Is there a specific anime that you can give me as an example that like kind of just gave better meaning, like for better and not for worse? Gesundheit.
I guess maybe not better, but different. I can think of, because I've been rewatching Yu Yu Hakusho because we did our first episode and that was the anime that I brought up as the example. But in my rewatching of it, I realized that there are these two characters. One is a good guy, Kurama, and then the other is this guy he fights who's like this total like sadistic, like very kind of dark and scary dude called Karasu. One thing that I was noticing, because I was watching it in both subbed and dubbed just to kind of get a feel for it and kind of see where the differences might be, is in both there's this weird fascination that Karasu has for Kurama, but it seems like in the dub they play up this kind of almost sexual tension between the two characters that isn't really as played up in the original subbed Japanese audio version. And I think that's an interesting thing because it adds this other layer of, yes, he's sadistic. Yes, he's like really terrifying. But there's this other layer of, okay, this might explain some of the fascination or the fixation he has with Kurama. And I thought that was a really kind of interesting move on the dubs team. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it just seemed like, okay, it seems like there's a little bit more kind of sexual tension here between the two characters.
I'm trying to think of one myself. There's just so many now that we've gotten to more of a mainstream thing, but I mean, there's so many good ones like that I really appreciate. Like, I mean, we can go to the best dubs ever. I mean, you got Cowboy Bebop. You got Full Metal Alchemist, depending on which one you want to think of. Brotherhood is mine. Recent ones right now that I'm currently just enjoying, or I have just finished watching. Ranking of Kings is great. I don't know if you've ever
need to watch that. No, man, I still need to.
I've been thinking about that anime ever since I've watched it. Even you can't even read the manga; it's not even translated. So like, that's one of the things that I really appreciated about that anime, is that it gave me the opportunity to experience that story from the manga in English. I could still watch it in sub, but I just feel like they did a really good service for, like you said, bringing that over to a dub, a format, and just, it made me really appreciate that story. I've cried from that anime.
Oh.
And it's so good. I want to do an entire episode on Ranking of Kings if we ever get to like our anime book club segment of our channel. You know, at some point that would be one I would like. That would be my number one choice, is to rewatch that. Yeah, for both of us to do. Like, what I want to do in the future is maybe like you and I take turns, like we choose one each month or something. But that's just down the road. But yeah, that's one that I really think of like is a really good dub. I wanted to tread back a little bit about like going back to the sub debate. Like, you have these purists. Now, a lot of people just call themselves the purists, or, you know, I guess diehard anime fans, or otaku, I guess you could probably say. They prefer the sub is because that's what the way the creator is meant for it to be seen.
Right.
And it's like those purists view it as an art form, and they don't believe it should be altered in any way. What do you feel about that? Because I mean, you have anime that gets censored into the English release. Like I've watched JoJo, and it gets censored beyond belief because you can't see all that violence. You can't see a 16-year-old buff dude smoking because they don't allow that. And they're trying not to promote that in English, but then they have it just blacked out. It just ruins that experience too. But I'm trying to play devil's advocate here a little bit. Like, do you agree with the purist route?
Oh, no, absolutely not. So that's the thing. Like, I feel like because of the history of this debate and how heated it could be, or how much, you know, for lack of a better term, gatekeeping there was, especially with sub purists, I always have to add like an asterisk to, well, I prefer subs, but whatever version of the anime got you to love a particular series, that's great. You know, whatever led you or opened that door or created something special for you and gave you a connection to the world of anime. Who am I to say, you know, that's wrong, or, hey, you know, this would have been better. Like, who cares? Like, you fell in love with an anime. I'm happy for you. You know, doesn't matter if it's sub or dub. Mm-hmm. I think this is purely for me just a really fascinating debate and something that I think is important to think about in terms of, as you were mentioning with JoJo, there has been some censorship, especially for audiences around the world, some of which has been, I would argue, detrimental while others are merely just kind of reformatting or repackaging for particular cultural contexts. One of the ones I think of a lot is is Sailor Moon.
Oh, I was just about to say that. Like, that is...
Yes.
Because you have American licensors, they often deem certain types of content, especially back in those days, inappropriate. And they don't want to show that to Western audiences. So you have that example that you're saying, and I'm hoping we're agreeing on the same thing, but changing Sailor, Uranus, and Neptune, right?
Yeah.
They were portrayed as cousins, while in the original Japanese version, these two characters were in love. Yeah. So to correct that, they made them into blood relatives, more or less.
Yeah, because there's nothing wrong with kissing cousins.
But I mean, like, I think they corrected it. They corrected that later down when they redubbed it, I think, with the newer version. What was it, Crystal?
Oh yeah, I've started that. I need to really buckle down and actually watch the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think that one actually covers the whole manga or the whole series. So that's kind of, and I think they did several seasons. But like you said, that is an example, like a classic example, really. I mean, you got that. I mean, the script of some shows they have to change for English dub so they can change the cultural references. So they don't. So the licensors believe they won't be understood outside Japan to make the show less confusing and more relatable to foreigners, including, like the Western audience. I mean, nowadays it's prevalent as it was in the past. It's just one of those debates. I know we're not going to ever, just talking about this, we're not going to solve it. We're not, there's always going to be that, that side. I mean, you have those purists, I can appreciate a sub. I really can. I want to get into a little nitpicky on stuff that I can overlook on a sub, but then there's stuff that I just can't. I just finished the first season of Vinland Saga over a month ago. And we watched it in dub, so this doesn't really pertain to this nitpick. But if I watched it in subbed, it would throw me off a lot because it's a period piece. This takes place in 1014 AD, where the Vikings were just, raiding people. So it's just so weird when you think about if I watched it in sub, it would confuse the hell out of me because one, you have these Vikings who are Danish and they're speaking in Japanese, but then they go, they're raiding, England and they're talking to English people and they're speaking Japanese, but they're not understanding them because they're both speaking Japanese. It's just, that's what throws me off. But it's one thing. It's like if it's a slice of life, if it's just a slice of life high school romance in Japan, I can appreciate that. I'm like, okay, I can accept that, as what it is. But it throws me off when it's like a period piece like that.
Yeah, I can see how that would create some cognitive dissonance, especially adding that extra layer. And when you are dealing with kind of multiple countries or multiple locations as your setting, I could see having to do the work of, okay, well, this is also now in Japanese and I'm reading subtitles. And then I have to remember all this stuff about, this is in this part of the world or this part of Europe. Whereas if it's dubbed, you can also do a lot more with accents.
There's... Right. Like the accents are the things that really sell it for me. Like Yuri on Ice, you have these people that come from Russia and they're speaking they have this Russian accent in English dub. It's just that little bit of detail, I just love that. Or going back to JoJo, the first season of JoJo where they're in England, everyone's speaking in an English, accent. And I appreciate that they actually put in the time and effort, and you kind of can't do that with sub.
Right. And I might be watching a sub anime where you have some kid, this is a classic, kind of used a lot in the slice of life or the school life anime, where you have a kid from the country who moves out to Tokyo or vice versa. And you have this play with the accents in the Japanese language, but my ear isn't developed enough to really hear, oh, this guy sounds like a country bumpkin. It's lost on me because I'm not familiar enough with the Japanese language and the various regional differences in spoken Japanese. I
agree. I mean, you have I think the best to tell that they are from the country when they move into the big city, especially in Japan, is I guess the slang that they use is the best. Yeah, is what I've ever distinguished on them saying y'all instead of they, or something like that.
Right. They'll usually put some American Southern dialect in the subtitling, which is supposed to clue you in. But like listening to the language being spoken, I'm like, I can't really tell the difference between these two speakers, and they clearly want you to, which is why they're changing the subtitling and having this guy say y'all and all that stuff.
I wanted to progress, but like, how do you feel about unofficial dubs translations? I saw you wrote that down in one of our questions.
Yeah, I actually
wouldn't that be called the abridged series, or I guess fan subbed?
Fan translations, abridged, all that stuff. So abridged obviously has more of the hilarious or ridiculous connotation. So if you think about like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged series, fucking hilarious.
I activate this card, I activate this, well I activate this, and I activate your mama, then I activate... What? You heard me, Kaiba. Your mama. I activated her. Yes, you can stop searching, Kaiba. After all these years, it turns out I'm your daddy.
Or even Dragon Ball Abridged.
A disagreement. He wanted himself to live, and well, I didn't.
Why do you want to die?
But, no, I meant I want him to die.
Is it because you look weird?
What?
Oh, you know, you got that big head, those weird lips, and that tail. And you don't have ears.
Okay, no.
And to top it all off, you're really kind of a jerk.
I had done the Sword Art Online one, and it's so funny.
Ooh.
I don't understand! We threw everything we had at him! How is he still standing?
How? Well, it's quite simple, really. You see, girly, you may think you got me all figured out, but there's one thing you didn't account for. My numbers are bigger than yours. Funny thing, really. Get to a high enough level and you're basically untouchable. My wounds heal faster than you can make them. We could do this all day and you would not be any closer to beating me. Not that it wouldn't be fun. But I've got good news. You see, there's no need to wonder where your god is. Because he's right here. And he's fresh out of mercy.
I think it's interesting. You have this with anime, you have this in the video game world with Japan-only releases, where people are going back and they're either putting a fan translation or they're dubbing over the original work in an unofficial capacity. In some cases, depending on who actually owns the intellectual property, they're shutting that shit down. And in other cases, they're actually saying, hey, this is pretty good work. Can we roll with this? Like good on you. I guess there's an audience. We're gonna work with you, and we're gonna roll with it. And I think we need to see more of the second moving forward. We need to see more of these studios, anime studios, video game studios, kind of looking at their fans and saying, "Oh wow, these people actually want this. Let's figure out how to make it happen." Instead of just like
shutting that shit down.
Exactly. Yeah.
You don't want to that you see that with fan games, with, Pokemon, you see that with Nintendo stuff. I mean, that shit gets shut down immediately as soon as you see it in a news feed.
They are the worst at that. And it's such a head scratcher. It's like, really? Like, these people clearly love what you have made to a ridiculous extent. Some of the games that people have made off of Pokemon, it's just like mind-blowing. Yeah,
they've made new Pokemon, like an entire new Pokemon game with new Pokemon in it, and I'm like, that's a lot of dedication to just put all that artwork that you designed into like an RPG, 2D version of Pokemon. That's right. Brilliant, but then they just shut that stuff down because they don't want you to, I guess they just find it so precious, but like how they handle that franchise. It's one of the most popular franchises ever, and you see their games, like, I know we're getting into video games, but it's garbage. Some of the games that are out now are garbage. They don't run well. They're not, I mean, the biggest one right now is Scarlet and Violet. Like how that game is running is garbage. And it's not just to blame on the tech that they have, but it's just like they rush these games out. But then you have all these fans that enjoy Pokemon and put time and effort into making these fan games. It's the same thing with the fan dubs, I enjoy those Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged. I always go back to that and Sword Art Online because they're just so funny. And at least a lot of studios now just need to accept it as like, oh, this is just a nod. It's good publicity, right. why get rid of it? And then when you do get rid of it, it's still publicity, but then like you're getting like you're just making yourself look like the bad guy.
Right, and even with the abridged series that are poking fun at it, they're clearly made out of a deep love and appreciation for the series itself.
And I don't feel like they're shutting them down as often as I hear about like Nintendo shutting games down.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's happening quite as much. I don't really know enough to know, okay, why there and not here. But it is interesting kind of to look at this want or this desire for fan subs or fan translations and just to think about, okay, well, who needs to step in, or what are the kind of boundaries that we should be setting between like the legality part of it, which is significant, and kind of where studios might need to step in a collaborative, managerial sort of way.
It's above my pay grade, but I agree with you.
Same. Hard same.
We're just asking the hard questions, but we can't solve it. I mean, do we want to go into like how some dubs just ruin the experience, or also enlighten it in a way, even if it's bad?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think we need to go there.
A so bad it's good scenario of anime. What would that be? I mean, do we want to say the one that we're thinking of at the top of our heads right now?
I think it needs to be said. Yeah.
Ghost Stories?
Oh my god. That dub.
Oh man, what can I say? It's so infamous for butchering the folklore of this series. I mean, it was supposed to be a horror story involving kids with all this mythology in Japanese. I mean, it turned into what? Essentially a gag anime. Or I guess what you would call a abridged series, which, oh man.
The OG abridged, yeah.
I mean, they turned this script into comedy gold almost.
It's almost like, yeah.
If I recall, I did some extensive, at least I did I watched one video on like the history of Ghost Story and like how it was an improvised script that allowed the voice actors to set the tone and subject for each scene. So like one person would come in and just improvise, and then the other person would have to improvise on top of that person's dialogue. And they took full advantage of it. Their ad-lib performances resulted in random characters telling lewd jokes and breaking the fourth wall constantly. But I guess the voice actors had a lot of fun with the script, because on one hand, the English dub version is terrible. Right. Because I think it's the second time they attempted to do a dub on it.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
I think they had somebody else do the dub, and then somebody else stepped in. I think it was ADV Films was the studio. You can quote me if I'm wrong, but I think they're the ones that stepped in to do this infamous dub.
Yeah, I think you're right. If I'm remembering this correctly, it was because like one, the original version, the sub, wasn't very popular, and then the dub got like the first attempt at the dub got like almost no traction, and then they were just like, okay, well, fuck it. It kind of in like a mystery science theater, that same kind of vibe where they're just like just cracking jokes and just saying, hey, we're just gonna have fun with it then. Yeah,
on one hand, that dub is so terrible. I mean, it's the Room of anime.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
It fails to explain the intricate details of the Japanese folklore and the mythology of this horror, series. But on the other hand, it's good that it doesn't take itself too seriously, because we rarely see horror anime series take this approach. It's just like the Golden Goose. That one that's like the only one I could think of that is just terrible, but it's so good to watch. Do you have a favorite line from that series?
Oh gosh,
in dub?
It's been too long.
Mine would have to be the bunny.
When he died, I was so sad that I would never hear that voice again. His laugh. His funny little requests.
Touch me.
His reprimands.
Touch me harder.
I mean, there's so many. Or like, have you accepted Jesus Christ as your love and savior?
You're such brave, strong, handsome men. Have you accepted Jesus as your personal savior? No, I'm Jewish.
The English voice actors had so much fun with this, and I don't even think they apologized to it, because they were having fun. I just like seeing that. I wish we get more of that. But I just wanted to talk about Ghost Stories as like, it's so bad it's good.
Yeah, and I think it needs to be said. I think we can find snippets or moments of that, but the fact that it's just, that's the entire series for Ghost Stories. But I think snippets or moments we get, obviously the 4 kids, just anything touched by 4 kids, like Yu-Gi-Oh! When they're literally, they took the guns out of the scene and are just pointing their fingers at Kaiba, like, we got you! And he's like, oh, I guess I have to run now.
Let's go, Kaiba.
On your feet.
Mr. Pegasus would like to have a few words with you.
I bet he would, but it'll take more than you 2 goons to grab me.
This can go easy, or we can snap you in two, wise guy.
You'll never take me alive.
Get him! He jumped!
They don't
Hands
actually
up.
have that. Yeah, or like Brock's famous line from Pokemon.
Huh? Have a donut. That always cheers me up. Pika pika.
These donuts are great. Jelly-filled are my favorite. Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut.
And it's like the studio just didn't think that we would be able to wrap our minds around some kind of snack from another culture or another part of the world. So they took this thing that looked nothing like a jelly donut and just said, yep, we're just going to call it a jelly donut, and that'll be that. Okay, so now it doesn't make sense in either context.
Yeah, and the 4 kids thing is, I like that we can bleed that into this topic. I mean, like them trying to translate these popular anime that wasn't in overseas, and now they're putting into Western audiences. Like they had to do the dub twice for One Piece because the 4 kids version is terrible. But then they also they censored everything. You have Sanji who smokes all the time.
Oh yeah,
but then they just give him a lollipop in his mouth. That's how they course corrected that, So it's just like those little things just to appease, I guess, Western audiences, or, because it was 4 kids. They were trying to show these Saturday morning cartoons to, a younger audience to get them into anime. But I mean, you have stuff like Toonami that's still running to this day that shows all that stuff and doesn't censor it, or at least to that degree of 4 kids.
Oh yeah, and I could definitely appreciate. I think Toonami. There aren't that many options out there, but they might be the gold standard for that. Especially when you think about the stuff that aired on there, like Rurouni Kenshin and Yu Yu Hakusho, Naruto, and all these other big titles from anime to date, and just the amount that they kind of trusted Western audiences. They trusted us to get it and to appreciate it and to learn and to have open minds, and then to have kind of the worst option for kids being like, well, we can't trust these kids to get it. And it's just kind of sad looking back, but also hilarious. I have a very complicated perspective on that whole 4 kids thing.
Me too, I do. Because it opened my eyes to a lot more anime back in the day, but Toonami was the golden standard. But it was, I couldn't watch Yu-Gi-Oh on Toonami. I don't think they had it there. I had to watch it on 4 kids. Yeah. So it was just what I got at the time. Is there any more we could say, or are we just going to get to the bottom line of this? Just a conclusion to this whole thing? Because obviously we're not going to, I agree. I don't think believing believing if sub is better than dub or dub is better than, the other one is productive.
Right.
Like you said, if you fell in love with an anime in this dub version, that's fantastic.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I agree. At the end of the day, we're getting amazing anime especially nowadays. It's just everywhere. It's just more mainstream, like you said, with all the streaming services, and it's just showing up in places like I'm seeing movies left and right, trailers of anime movies in theaters. I'm seeing the newest My Hero Academia movie. I'm seeing the newest Dragon Ball Z, and it's doing really well in theaters that week when it launches. And then they even do the sub and dub showings, so you can get those people that either want to watch it in sub or dub. So at the end of the day, I think we're getting to that point where you can watch it on anything, whether it is sub or dub. But if you, like you said, if you enjoyed it in dub, that's great. I mean, it's showing that all this love for anime coming into the Western audiences, regardless if it's sub or dub. I really appreciate that, especially now. I feel like a lot of people that are growing up now have it a lot easier than how we did, 20 years ago.
Certainly. Dubs are so much better than they were when we were growing up watching anime. That is just 100%. Like, unless you're talking about like Cowboy Bebop or some of the really good ones from our era. But for the most part, dubs are just leaps and bounds better than they were when we were growing up watching anime. One thing that I've been trying to do differently, and gravitate toward the sub version. I'm also learning Japanese, so I want to kind of hear spoken Japanese, kind of see text written in Japanese to kind of get a better handle on it. But one thing that I'm starting to do now is, if I love a series and I've completed it and there's no more new content, if there's a dubbed version, I'm going to go back and watch it. One, I'm fascinated by the differences and the creative choices on both sides. But two, I feel like that is one way to get a better appreciation and to kind of start to have a more productive perspective on this sub versus dub, where we take out the verses and it just becomes, no, there are subs and there are dubs. And that's what it is. It's not that they're in opposition with one another or in conflict with one another. I think there are historically cases where they clearly are, especially with Sailor Moon, as we mentioned before. But if we can kind of change the nature of the debate and go back, and if you watch the dub, check out the sub, and just see what is different, or what, just kind of go there and do that kind of work. I think the bottom line is, whether you're watching sub, you're watching dub, whether you have a preference or you don't, as long as you're watching anime and you're enjoying it, you're falling in love with the characters, the art, just whatever grabs you in the world of anime. There's no judgment. There's no versus here. It's all anime, and it's all just brilliant. So that's the bottom line.
I do want to hear from anyone that's listening right now. Just send us an email at theanimenpodcast@gmail.com. What do you prefer, sub or dub? Please leave it down in the comments below on YouTube. That has been our discussion. Is there any other wrap up for that? I don't think there is, because I think you said it beautifully.
Yeah, I think that about covers it.
We're still working on the podcast services right now. It's about to be accepted into Google services right now. We only have it on Spotify. We have this on YouTube, of course, but I'm trying to get it on Apple Podcasts and everything. So this is like, it's a slow situation that I could not set up faster before we launched with the first episode. We'll let you guys know as we progress, but right now we only have it on Spotify. And if that changes, we will let you guys know in the future. Before we wrap up, and where I can ask you, where can people find you? What are we watching, by the way, right now on anime?
Oh.
I forgot to do that at the beginning. I don't know how I'll structure it in the future, but I just wanted to end off here. What are we watching right now?
Oh my gosh.
You just give me one anime. What are you watching right now?
Okay. So me, I like to go back and watch series that I fell in love with earlier. So right now, I am rewatching The World God Only Knows, which is just a hilarious anime about this guy who is just so good at dating sims that he is called the King of Conquests. And this demon mistakes him for like a guy who's like really a player. And there are a bunch of lost souls that need to be recovered. And they're basically going into distraught girls, because they feed off all of those negative emotions. And so she entraps him, the main character, in a contract to recover these lost souls, because she thinks he can actually like do this in real life, but it's only with 2D women in video games. And it's just this funny little cute anime about that. And I love it. I love it so much. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, you were talking to me about this one off air. And did that inspire you to rewatch it right now when you were talking to me about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we were talking about topics, and I think that came up in conversation. So, yeah, perfect. I'm glad. So, yeah, the world that only God knows, right?
The world God only knows. Yeah.
The world only God knows. Okay. And where can people watch that if, they want to watch it?
So it's streaming on Crunchyroll.
Perfect. I'm at my pick right now is it's on Crunchyroll. I'm watching Persona 5, the animation.
Oh, nice.
So
I love that one.
I think watching it right now, I am actually wanting to play the game. So I don't know if that's probably a good thing because they're trying to promote the series as a whole.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Like, it was a little confusing at first, but once they start explaining things halfway through, it's like it kind of clicks. It's really great. I'm really enjoying it, but it's making me want to play the game. I wanted to originally, and we're watching it in dub, which I wanted to specify. I wanted to originally watch the Persona 4 animation originally because it had a great dub cast. The voices of Johnny M. Bosch, Laura Bailey, Troy Baker, they're all in there. And so it's on Crunchyroll, but I decided to not watch it because it wasn't in dubbed, because I've heard really good things that these voice actors did those voices for, and I wanted to watch it in dub just to get some appreciation for those people. But I skipped out to watch the dub version of Persona 5. So right now I'm watching Persona 5 and I'm enjoying it, and I want to play all the games now. So because you've told me so much about Persona, and I've never gotten to Persona because it was next to impossible to play these titles, and now all of them are essentially out. I think Persona 3 all the way to 5 right now is out on everything now because it was like only tied to the PSP, the PS Vita, and then just PlayStation consoles. Well, I wanted to play Persona, but I was just like, do I have 60 to 70 hours of time to do that? I don't know.
It's a commitment. It's a commitment.
But yeah, that's my pick. That's your pick. Go check it out on Crunchyroll. But that'll about do it. Where can people find you, Raven?
So I have a video game channel on YouTube called Raven Replays, and I play horror games and then I review them. So you can find me there.
I am the same. I'm on YouTube, Grumble Gamers. Play a variety of games, anything in between, really, at this point. I don't just stick to one genre, as you know already. So, but yeah, we'll leave it down in the description below, where you could find us on those. But yeah, that'll about do it for this episode of the Animen podcast. Do not know what our next topic is, but we will let you know soon. And as we progress, we'll probably leave you a little tease on what the next episode will be in the future at the end of each episode. But right now, don't really know what that is. We have like a billion topics to discuss as we wrote down everything. So we'll let you know soon. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, if you guys enjoyed this, please email us over at theanimenpodcast@gmail.com for any questions that we could read on the show for you. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave a like down below. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Like us over at Spotify right now. We should be available soon on other podcast services. But until then, I'm Crazed.
I'm Ravenrook.
Bye-bye.
Bye.